Hello, thank you for listening. My name is Janusz Kowalski, and I want to tell you a story from a time when I was just 32 years old. Before the war, my world was made of paper and ink. I was a journalist. I believed in the elegant power of a well-structured narrative. I saw life, history, even chaos as a manuscript waiting for a skilled editor. My job was to collect the disparate facts, the scattered quotes, the messy details, and arrange them into a story that had a beginning, a middle, and an end. A story that made sense. I believed with all the conviction of a man who loved his craft that there was no event so terrible, no truth so ugly, that it could not be contained and understood within the framework of language. The war taught me that some stories aren't meant to be written, they are meant to be survived. People think the hardest part of being a journalist is finding the story. It isn't. It's choosing the right words, finding the perfect structure to contain a difficult truth. But what do you do when the story is so vast, so monstrous, that no words can hold it? In the summer of 1944, my city, Warsaw, became such a story. It was a symphony of defiance played on broken instruments, a frantic, desperate scream against the silence of the world. And I was sent to find a single, vital paragraph hidden in its most terrifying chapter. The air itself had weight in August of '44. It was thick with the dust of buildings that had stood for centuries, now pulverized into a fine, gray powder that coated your tongue and lined your throat. Every breath was a taste of our city's death. The soundtrack was constant, a grinding, percussive score of machine gun fire from a street away, the resonant crump of mortar shells landing somewhere in the old town, and always the distant, almost gentle whisper of flames consuming another home. This was the Warsaw of the Uprising, our grand, impossible, beautiful gesture of defiance. My part in this opera of ghosts was a quiet one. I wasn't a soldier who charged barricades. I was with the Home Army's intelligence cell. My weapon wasn't a rifle, it was my memory. A strange gift, they called it, photographic. I could look at a page, a map, a face, and it would be filed away in my mind, perfectly preserved. A human camera, a living document. My pre-war life of memorizing quotes and sources had become a tool of war. The order came on a Tuesday. I remember the sky was a strange, bruised yellow from the smoke. My commander, a man we called the Professor, laid it out for me. The Germans were bringing in reinforcements to crush us, specifically elements of the Hermann Göring Panzer Division. We knew they were coming. We didn't know how their routes, their staging areas, their timetables. This was the information that could mean the difference between a fighting chance and a wholesale slaughter. This information was on a map pinned to a corkboard inside the German command post they'd established in the old postal savings bank on Jasna Street, a fortress within our dying city. My mission was to get inside, see that map, and get out. My cover was that of a Polish Red Cross volunteer, part of a small, neutral delegation permitted to deliver thin soup and medical supplies. My name for the day was Stanisław. A simple, forgettable name. My stomach was a knot of cold wire as I put on the armband. The crisp red cross on the white fabric felt like a target. It was supposed to be a shield, a symbol of neutrality. In Warsaw in 1944, neutrality was a myth. There were only sides, and the ground between them was a graveyard. Walking to Jasna Street was like traversing a dreamscape. The city I knew, the city whose every cobblestone and corner cafe I had chronicled in my articles, was gone. It was a skeleton. Facades of grand apartments stood like hollowed-out skulls, their windows vacant, eyes staring into nothing. The streets were rivers of rubble. I passed a barricade manned by boys who couldn't have been older than 16, their faces smudged with dirt, their eyes ancient. They held their rifles like holy relics, their belief in our cause a fierce, fragile flame. I was one of them, but my battlefield was different. My fight was to be invisible. The German checkpoint was a sharp line drawn between two worlds. On one side, the chaos of the uprising. On the other, the chilling, brutal order of the Reich. The guards were immaculate. Their uniforms were clean, their boots polished. It was an obscenity against the backdrop of our ruin. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage of bone. I presented my papers. My Polish was fluent, of course, but my German was passable, learned from reading forbidden books. I kept my answers short, my gaze low. My journalist's instinct screamed at me to observe everything, the unit patches on their collars, the wear on their rifle stocks, the casual cruelty in their eyes. But Stanisław, the relief worker, would not notice such things. Stanisław was here to serve soup. He was nobody. They let me pass. The air inside the command post was different. It smelled of boiled cabbage, stale cigarette smoke, and the faint, metallic scent of ozone from the radio equipment. was a pocket of German efficiency carved into the heart of Polish agony. Officers strode through the corridors with purpose. Telephones rang, typewriters clattered. This was the machine that was killing my city, and I was walking through its gears. Every nerve in my body was alight. I was cataloging everything, despite myself. The way the floorboards creaked outside the main strategy room, the nervous tick of a young lieutenant, the brand of cigarettes an SS officer smoked, details, the building blocks of a story. I was led to a makeshift mess hall where I began my work, ladling watery soup into bowls for tired, grim-faced guards. I moved slowly, deliberately. My mind was a whirlwind, but my body was calm. I was searching for my chance. The door to the strategy room was down the hall, guarded, but routines breed complacency. I watched the guard change. I noted the timing. I saw officers come and go, their conversations a low hum of German I strained to decipher. My chance came when a senior officer, his face flushed with anger, stormed out of the room, leaving the door unlatched for a few precious seconds as he berated a subordinate in the hallway. No one was looking at the door. No one was looking at the soup man. It was now or never. I picked up my empty soup tureen, walked down the hall. My steps didn't make a sound. My breath was a ghost in my lungs. I reached the door, pushed it open just enough to slip inside, and closed it gently behind me. Silence. The room was a shrine to organized death, and there it was, sprawled across a massive table. The map, it was beautiful in its terrible clarity. A web of streets I knew by heart, now overlaid with the enemy's logic. Thick red arrows showed the planned armored thrusts. Blue circles marked artillery positions. Street names were annotated with German military precision. SS Panzer Grenadier Regiment 3, Bereitstellungsraumheerer, Panzersperre, it was all there. I didn't have time to study it. I had to inhale it. My mind did its work. It was not thought, it was instinct. My eyes scanned the map section by section. The shutter in my brain clicked, click, click. Every line, every symbol, every notation burned into my memory. The 9th SS Panzer Division, Hohenstaufen, moving from the west. The Dirlewanger Brigade reinforcing the Wola district. The exact coordinates for mortar batteries targeting the hospital. It was a litany of our destruction, a blueprint for our doom. I had it. I had it all. I turned. Slipped out of the room, closed the door. No one had seen. I walked back to the mess hall, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs. The elation was dizzying, a dangerous, intoxicating high. I had done it. I had the paragraph that could change the story. My duties were finished. I was escorted back to the main entrance. I walked out into the courtyard, back into the bruised yellow daylight. I had succeeded. For a single fleeting moment, I felt the impossible lightness of hope, and then the world ended. They brought them out from a side building, a family, a man in a torn but clean shirt, a woman clutching his arm, her face a mask of disbelief, and a little girl no older than 7, her dark hair in 2 small braids. She was holding a scruffy, one-eyed rag doll. My journalist's brain started working automatically, trying to find the narrative. Who are they? What did they do? Are they resistance? Hiding Jews? I was looking for the reason, for the story. A German NCO, a man with a heavy, bored face, barked an order. 2 soldiers shoved the family against the wall of the courtyard, the same wall I had passed just minutes before. The father put his arm around his wife. He whispered something to his daughter, and she buried her face in his leg. The mother did not cry. She just stared, her eyes wide with a horror so profound it had gone beyond sound. I stood frozen, maybe 30 meters away. I was Stanisław, the relief worker. I was a ghost. To interfere was to die, to fail my mission. The intelligence locked in my skull was worth more than 3 lives. That was the cold, brutal calculus of war. My idealism, my belief in the sanctity of a single life, screamed in protest, but the logic was unassailable. So I watched. The NCO unholstered his pistol. He did not shout, he did not posture, he just raised the gun. The sound was not loud, it was flat, a pop and another. The man and woman crumpled, a tangle of limbs. They fell like sacks of grain. The little girl was left standing alone. She looked down at her parents, then up at the soldier. Her mouth was a small O of confusion. She didn't scream, she didn't run. She just stood there, holding her one-eyed doll. He shot her. The doll fell from her hand and landed in the dust. One button eye staring up at the smoky, indifferent sky. There was no story there. There was no beginning, middle, or end. There was no moral, no lesson. There was just an ending, a brutal, meaningless, ugly full stop. The intelligence in my head, the vital map that was supposed to save us, suddenly felt like a tumor. It was knowledge bought with a silence I could never justify. I turned and walked away. The grand narrative of the Warsaw Uprising, of our heroic struggle, dissolved into the image of a fallen doll in a dusty courtyard. I made it back. I delivered the intelligence. I recited every street name, every unit designation, every timetable from the map burned into my memory. The professor wrote it all down, his face grim. They called my information a breakthrough. They said it helped them anticipate an armored push, that it saved hundreds of fighters in the northern sector. They said I was a hero, but I never wrote again, not professionally. After the war, after the camps, after everything, I tried. I sat with a pen and a blank sheet of paper, and all I could see was that courtyard. How do you write a headline for that? Family executed in Warsaw. It's a fact, but it isn't the truth. The truth was the silence after the shots. The truth was the way the dust settled on the doll's eye. There are no words for that. Language, my trusted tool, my beautiful, precise craft, had failed me. It could describe the event, but it could never contain the horror of it. I spent my life before the war believing that if you just found the right words, you could make sense of anything. I learned in that courtyard that some truths are not meant to be structured. They are meant to be broken by. They are the voids around which you must build the rest of your life. The world is not a neat manuscript. It is a chaotic, blood-stained, and often meaningless draft, and sometimes the most important parts are the spaces between the words, the stories that are felt but never told. People read history books about the uprising. They see numbers, dates, strategies, but history is not lived in paragraphs. It is lived in moments, in the fall of a single child's doll. The real story of war isn't the grand headline. It's the obituary that no one will ever get to write. This memory is not mine alone. It belongs to that family. It belongs to Warsaw. It is a story written in ash that I have carried for a lifetime. Help me share its weight. Subscribe and promise with me that these quiet moments will never be silenced.